The lawyer approached me after the funeral. Whether he truly hadn't found a better opportunity until then, or he'd been putting off facing me in person until the very last moment, I'll never know. But it doesn't really matter. He handed me the letter, my mother's final message, or so he said, and then he disappeared through the stained glass doors of the church. No doubt he climbed into a BMW or Mercedes that he'd miraculously parked near the front of the building and drove off to another grieving family. Wondering if the letter was the suicide note I had originally thought my mom neglected to leave, I excused myself from the loitering crowd of pity-driven family and friends to find somewhere quiet. I pretended to make my way towards the restrooms, but continued past them into a dark room behind a thankfully locked door. With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter. It was only one page, single-spaced, written on a piece of notebook paper that had been sloppily torn away from its friends. A few round wrinkles could be seen distorting a few words. Running my finger over my mother's final tears brought a few fresh ones to my own eyes. I subdued them and began to read. My dear Mark, I'm writing this to clear up any dark ideas of what you might think drove me to end my life. I want to absolve you of any guilt or shame you may be feeling at my passing. I want to take away your sadness and replace it with the joy that fills my heart knowing I'm going to be with your dad in just a few minutes. I knew it would sound crazy, so I never told you about the Ouija board I found at the thrift store. From the very night I brought it home, it allowed me to talk to Ted. At first, he would only answer simple yes or no questions, but one night he asked if I wanted to see him. I'm sure you can imagine what my answer was. He appeared to me every night. He laid next to me as I fell asleep, just as he did in life. Everything was just as it was before the accident. I would have been so happy if I could just touch him. Eventually, I asked him if there was a way I could, and he told me what I had to do, which is what I'm doing just as soon as I finish writing this letter. I had to stop reading and collect myself. Her words made her seem so lucid. Besides the obviously delusional ideas about my dad's ghost, I never would have guessed she would be in the mental state to write so clearly before she slit both her wrists and her throat. By the time I'd found her, her body had been almost entirely drained of blood. She was a pale, sunken version of the woman I'd known my whole life. I continued reading. Although my life on Earth is ending, seeing your father has given me hope for what comes next. Just know that I love you and that I can't wait for you to join us so we can be a family again. Please don't rush. Life is a wonderful gift. I just didn't want to spend it without your father by my side anymore. Goodbye for now, Mom. The sadness didn't fade, but I did find an odd comfort in my mother's apparent insanity. Something had obviously come over her, something she couldn't have resisted on her own. She was right. The letter did free me of any guilt or shame surrounding her suicide. I stopped by Mom's house after the burial just to check in on it. I guess, according to the will, it had become my house, but I'll never think of it that way. I went upstairs to the room where I'd found my mother's lifeless body. When I opened the door, she was standing there as if she'd been waiting for me. Her throat hung open, and she held her slashed wrists out to the sides as if welcoming me to embrace her. I froze. Something about her smile was so unfamiliar, so disconnected from the person who raised me. The way she bared her teeth didn't resemble any expression I recognized. "Here I am, sweetie," she whispered or screamed. I really couldn't distinguish the inhuman voice that resonated through the room. Still staring at me with that sickly smile, she added, "Here I am, with you until the end." I left the house in a dead run. I didn't speak to anyone or stop anywhere else until I got to my apartment in the city. My mother wasn't lying. She usually waits until I've been able to put her out of my mind to show up in a reflection or a photo. She's never there if I look twice. She reveals herself just long enough to remind me that she's there, always bearing that evil grin. I know the thing I'm seeing isn't my mother. I'd bet everything I have that whatever she was seeing wasn't my father. I just need it to go away. I never feel alone. I never feel safe. I'm just about ready to end my own life if it will just make her disappear for good.